There is a squirrel in your yard right now, or there was one yesterday. And if you watch closely, you start to notice something. It is not just passing through. Comes back. The same fence. The same branch. The same corner of the lawn almost at the same time of day. Most people assume a squirrel in the yard is random, just an animal wandering by. But a squirrel that keeps returning is not wandering. It is making a decision. And that decision is about your yard, your habits, and its own survival. So today we are going to read that squirrel the way it actually behaves. You will learn why it keeps choosing your yard, what it is really doing when it freezes and stares at you, why it digs in your grass and then forgets, how it has quietly mapped your entire property, and the one thing your yard might be offering that the squirrel cannot find anywhere else. And by the end, there is one specific behavior to watch for. Because when a returning squirrel suddenly changes its routine, it is usually trying to tell you something. The first thing to understand is that a squirrel does not see your yard the way you do. You see grass, a fence, a tree, maybe a feeder. The squirrel sees a map. A detailed mental map of food, danger, escape routes, and safe places to rest. Squirrels are highly territorial in their own quiet way, and they tend to live within a surprisingly small home range. For many backyard squirrels, that whole world is just a few yards wide. So your yard is not a random stop. It may be a core part of one animal's entire territory. That is why you often see what looks like the same squirrel again and again. Probably is the same squirrel. It knows where your trees are. It knows which fence lines connect to which branches. It knows where it feels exposed and where it feels safe. And every visit adds new information to that map. So why your yard and not the one next door? Usually it comes down to three things: food, cover, and routes. If your yard offers reliable food, a feeder, a fruit tree, nuts, or even spilled seed, the squirrel has a reason to return. Animals do not waste energy. A reliable food source is worth remembering and worth defending. Cover matters just as much. A squirrel needs places to hide quickly, dense shrubs, a fence it can run along, a tree it can spiral up in seconds. And routes tie it all together. Squirrels travel along edges, fences, branches, and wires, like a hidden network of highways above and around your yard. If your yard sits on a good route with food at one end and cover at the other, it becomes valuable real estate. The squirrel is not visiting you. It is using a resource it has decided is worth the risk. Now think about the moment you and the squirrel actually notice each other. It often freezes, completely still, and it stares. People sometimes read this as the squirrel being curious or even friendly. But that stillness is something older than curiosity. A frozen squirrel is calculating. It is deciding whether you are a threat, how close you are, and where its nearest escape route is. Freezing makes a squirrel harder to see because movement is what predators lock onto. So it holds, watches, and waits for more information. If you take a step, it may flick its tail, reposition, or bolt. That tail flick is not random either. A squirrel's tail is a signal flag used to warn other squirrels and sometimes to communicate that a predator has been spotted. So when a squirrel freezes and stares at you, it is not admiring you. It is running a quiet risk assessment with you as the variable. One of the strangest things you will see a returning squirrel do is dig. It buries something, pats the soil, and walks away. And later, it seems to dig in completely different spots, as if it forgot where it hid the food. But this is not forgetting. This is a survival strategy called scatter hoarding. Instead of storing all its food in one place, where a single thief could take everything, the squirrel spreads it out across dozens or hundreds of tiny hidden caches. Each one is a small insurance policy against a hard winter. And squirrels are far better at finding these caches than they look. They use memory, landmarks, and a powerful sense of smell to recover a large share of what they bury. Some caches are even fake, dug and covered with nothing inside, a bluff to fool any animal that might be watching. So when a squirrel digs in your lawn, it is not making a mess. It is treating your yard as a long-term storage system, one it plans to come back to. Here is the part most people never realize. That squirrel has not just mapped your yard. It has started to map you. Animals that live close to humans learn human patterns fast, because our patterns are predictable. When the door opens, when the feeder gets filled, when the dog comes out, when the yard is quiet and safe and when it is not. A squirrel that visits the same yard every day is constantly testing these patterns. It learns the times you are around and the times you are not. It learns how close it can get before it needs to flee. It may even learn the difference between a person walking past and a person walking toward it. This is why backyard squirrels often seem bolder over time. They are not becoming tame. They are becoming informed. The squirrel has simply gathered enough data to predict that, in your yard, the reward is usually worth the risk. So what is the real reason a particular squirrel keeps coming back to your yard and not another? Often, it is one specific thing the squirrel cannot easily find elsewhere. Sometimes it is food security, a feeder that is always stocked when natural food is scarce. Sometimes it is water, especially in dry weather, when a simple bird bath becomes one of the most valuable spots in the neighborhood. Sometimes it is a nesting site, a hollow, a dense tree, or a quiet corner where it can build a leafy shelter called a dray. And sometimes it is safety, a yard with good cover and fewer predators than the surrounding area. The squirrel is not making an emotional choice. It is solving a problem. Your yard, for this one animal, is the best available answer to the question every wild animal is always asking. Where can I survive with the least risk and the most reward? Once you understand that a returning squirrel has a routine, the most important thing you can do is watch for when that routine breaks. A squirrel that suddenly stops visiting may have lost its food source, found a better territory, or run into a new predator nearby. A squirrel that suddenly becomes frantic, digging quickly and feeding hard, is often reading the season, preparing for cold or scarcity before you even feel it coming. A squirrel that suddenly freezes more often, or gives sharp alarm calls, may be telling you that something has changed in the area, a hawk, a cat, or another threat moving through. Wild animals are constantly reacting to information you cannot see. But a squirrel that trusts your yard becomes a kind of sensor. Its behavior is a live readout of what is happening just beyond your view. You just have to learn to read it. So when a squirrel keeps visiting your yard, it is not random, and it is not nothing. It is a small, intelligent animal that has chosen your patch of the world out of all the others around it. It has mapped your trees, your fences, and your habits. It has hidden food it intends to return for. It has weighed the risk of you against the reward of being here, and decided again and again that your yard is worth it. That is not a coincidence. That is a relationship, even if only one side fully understands it. And once you see it that way, the squirrel on your fence stops being background noise. It becomes what it always was. A neighbor, quietly surviving, a few feet from your window. And there is one more signal worth watching for. If the squirrels in your yard suddenly vanish all at once, and the birds go quiet with them, that silence is rarely an accident. Because when the small animals disappear together, something larger has usually arrived.